Why does Oshun use a mirror? Great question. Before we get into this topic, please be sure to subscribe to our channel, comments, everything below this video, right? Oshun, you're going to see her usually with the mirror. And it's a complex answer, and it's not as easy as most people would think. Someone actually asked me this the other day, and it actually caught me by surprise because I had never actually put in that much thought to it, but I began to realize through my study it's touched on a couple different ways within Ifa, right? It actually doesn't necessarily have to do with her vanity. It has a much deeper meaning. But one of the first odus I'd like to delve into about this topic is Ogunda Vede, right? Or Ogunda Obe. And what happened in this sign was that Oshun was very poor, unfortunately. And what she had was one set of white clothes, right? But due to her poverty, she would wash them every day in the river, right? Because she always wanted to be kempt. She always wanted to look good, right? So it's from this that a lot of people say, well, she was vain. That's why she was always looking at herself in the river, washing her clothes, making sure she looked good. Well, I would go a little deeper than that. She was just somebody who was trying to mask the pain that came from, basically her poverty-stricken situation. So what ended up happening is every day she would wash her clothes in the river, and with time, those white clothes became yellow. And a lot of people interpret this as to why Oshun's color is yellow, right? Apart from the fact that she is associated with that frequency of light in her Orisha aspect, right? So if we're looking at the mirror can be interpreted from the reflection of her seeing herself in the river, basically. So the river represents, in my opinion, Oshun's her growth, right? When you go from someone who's poverty stricken, and then in Ogunda Bede was where Oshun became very wealthy, it was a reminder to her that she had to grow, right? She would look at herself every day, and people would say it's vanity, but it was more her recognizing her situation and realizing that she had to grow from it, right? It was more of an introspection. It motivated her. She said, I'm in this current state, but I don't want to stay here. So I have to look at who I am every morning and try to be a better person tomorrow, which when it comes to, laws of success or anything like that, I would recommend that to everybody. You hear all these people talk about, you have to look at your goals, you have to look at your dreams every morning, whether it be like a goal wall, or looking at your goal every morning when you brush your teeth or anything like that. That's basically what Oshun did here. So she would look at herself every morning and be like, I want to be a better person tomorrow. So it represents her growing, and her children as well. Or anybody that wants to really take the moral of this story, is that you have to look at yourself every day, and if you're not comfortable with who you are, productively we have to better ourselves, right? And in her case, she wanted to have a better economic position, and by her looking at herself every day, it helped her grow from it, right? And it also represents the introspection that all people, when they get involved in Orisha, they have to really analyze what reason they're getting involved for. Because Oshun, ironically, what she wanted the money for was to crown Orisha. And Ogunda Vede was where, unfortunately, Oshun didn't have the money to crown Orisha, and people would belittle her. So when she went through this introspection period, and she realized that, due to the divination that was done by Orunmila, and her having to sacrifice everything that she had, or her last dollar, by her looking in the river, she realized, this is where I want to be, and this is what I want to be. So I'm going to give my last to be able to fulfill my destiny and become better, right? And ultimately that happened in that Odu, where Eshu basically facilitated that Oshun would get the money to be able to crown her Orisha ceremony, right? So in one aspect, it does represent Oshun's fulfillment as well, because once she was able to look in the river from a comfortable standpoint with herself, it was a reminder, hey, I've seen my progress and I've been able to become this person now. So it represents her vanity or her recognition or her crowning moment, but it also represents her struggle to be able to get there. So really deep stuff, it's much deeper than just, hey, I want to look at myself all the time, right? Which is kind of what they want to paint Oshun out to be sometimes, that she was this vain diva, when in reality she was a woman who was extremely motivated and wanted to grow, and she really held herself accountable by looking at herself every day and saying, I'm going to be a better person tomorrow. So kudos to that, and to be a child of hers is an honor, because it's certain traits that I feel I share myself, where I'm constantly looking for ways to grow. And so it's a great it's a great message from an incredible Orisha. So that's the first aspect of the answer that I'm delving into as far as Odu. And then there's another more mystical, spiritual aspect to it. And that was born in or manifested in the Odu of Owanimei, where actually is one of the first Odus where the mirrors were manifested, right? And the mirrors represented the doorway between this world and the next, where you're going to see a lot of people have mirrors as a prohibition when they go through their initiation process, or just in general, because it's the doorway to the spirit world, and not everything over there is regulated. Like, we really can't control all the things we're gonna encounter when we're over there. So when you go through your initiation, a lot of people are gonna say, hey, cover your mirrors, don't look in any mirrors, things like that, don't be vain, right? Anything like that. But there's a spiritual undertone there where you shouldn't be looking at that in that delicate spiritual state, because you never know what you're actually going to see or what's going to manifest through that, right? Oshun being the owner of mirrors to a certain degree, it's really interesting, because you could say she's somebody that interacts with the spiritual world frequently, because she was constantly looking into the mirror, constantly transporting herself to the other realm, where by nature the children of Oshun are going to be very adept spiritists, or they're going to be people that really have a fluid connection with their mediumship, right? Or with the cult of Egun in general, because you could even say Oshun was the keeper of the doorway between that world and the next this world and the next by way of the mirror. So it's another connotation where it represents her spiritual prowess as well. So two aspects of that, symbol for her, that object for her as a power symbol, that really represents two aspects of her. One aspect being the motivated woman that she was, and how much she has to do with goal achieving by any means necessary. And then the other one, the spiritual connotations, where the mirror was actually the doorway between this world and the next, and Oshun was the manipulator of it. So it speaks of her mediumship, her role in those processes, and the Egun cult and the spirit cult and all of those different things. So she has a lot to do with both of those things. It represents the mirror to the self. It's somebody who is constantly introspecting, somebody who is constantly trying to get better, but at the same time, it also speaks of, her acceptance of herself. And it really is a great example, because at one point, Oshun couldn't accept herself. She had a very big complex when it came to looking at herself. She wasn't the woman she wanted to be. So for all the women out there, or just people in general who have, issues with self-confidence and things like that, Oshun is a great person to really lean upon and invoke when it comes to self-confidence, because she was the smallest Orisha. She was the least considered, and this is mentioned in the Odu Oshedura, where she wasn't considered or respected. So Oshun is not just an Orisha for somebody who's perfect per se, or somebody who's aesthetically pleasing, or somebody who's just got it all together, whether it be money, whether it be certain situations of life. Oshun is really a deity that is invoked, or should be invoked, by people who are trying to better themselves, right? Because that's exactly what she did. She wasn't an overnight process. This took years of training, years of discipline, and years of sacrifice for her to become Iyalote, right? The mother of nations, or that feminine leader that she was, right? Or Olori Iyami Oshoronga, or the leader of the Iyami Oshoronga cult. These are power positions, but these were things that came with time and sacrifice. So that's what the mirror symbolizes, and to me, what it symbolizes with Oshun, right? So great question. Guys, great questions coming in every day, trying to put out as much material as possible. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment. We're coming out with the answers. Please subscribe, and the channel's growing wonderfully. Botanica Candles and More appreciates you, as do I, Joseph Baba Ifa, and keep them coming, guys, so we can keep putting out this information and educating ourselves in this culture, so we can practice it better and really be a beacon of light and hope for this world as we move forward as an Ifan and Orisha community. Blessings, guys.